All right. Grace, mercy, and peace from him who is and was and is to come very soon, I'm certain. This is Rogue Diabetic, and welcome to the Digital Wilderness. Okay, so today I'm going to do a flat Earth video. I don't think I've ever done one before. And if I have, it's been a long time. I'm pretty sure I haven't done one on the Digital Wilderness, maybe on one of my old channels, but I don't know. But basically, I'm just going to talk a little bit today. I saw this video by this other YouTuber that was called Chatting with a Flat Earther. And this is what these guys do. Okay, they bring on these people that are like flat earthers that you can tell that they find that they try to find like the dumbest ones, or I don't even know if they're like real, or if they're just kind of like actors, you know what I'm saying? That they they aren't even genuine flat earther, so they bring them on, and then they right, to make them look bad, and look stupid. So, and then of course those videos get seen. Videos like this don't get seen. Anything that makes the ball earthers look bad. Although there's still you can still find a few out there. I know Jaronism still has a channel. He's okay. He's not a Christian, but as far as just the information that he presents factually, when it comes to cosmology, he's pretty much on the money with that. So Eric Dubay, 200 proofs that the Earth is not a spinning ball. That one is they wiped out his channel, but it's made it back up now. Somehow somebody else uploaded it, because Eric was one of those, they kicked him off of YouTube. They slandered him. They said he was anti-Semitic, and I never ever heard anything anything about Semitism, pro or anti. Okay, that's isn't what his content was about. Of course, but they have to make it. They all have to make it about that. So, because Einstein or whatever. So, okay, this guy was telling a little bit of his story about how how he became a flat earther, and I couldn't even listen to the whole thing, but I thought I'd get on, and I thought I would share my story about how I became a flat earther, and it's really pretty. I suppose you could say that I started becoming a flat earther as young as as soon as my mom started taking me to Sunday school. Although I actually did not become a full-fledged flat earth person until 2017. And so it took some time. The very first related type of question that I was asking, or that I was researching, when it came to I guess cosmology or theology or whatever, because whether the Earth is flat or not has theological implications. But I just always But even though I was being exposed to the Bible at an early age, I wasn't everybody has these scales over their eyes when it comes to this, because when I was in grade school, we had this classroom with two maps, and you could pull them down, and we had one of the Western Hemisphere and one that you pulled down of the Eastern Hemisphere, like Eurasia and Africa. So, and of course, as a little kid, even as far back as first and second grade, I was always taught that, we were always taught that the Earth is a ball. Okay, that's all you ever saw it depicted as. Okay, this is what the Earth looks like if you were looking down on it. Okay, it's covered with a dome. Okay, the stars are in the firmament. Okay, the firmament is a dome. So it's not like we're not a ball spinning in space. So, but that's like, but all the way through grade school, it was never depicted as anything other than a ball, than a spinning ball. Okay, and then by the time we got to like fourth grade, they were, they were starting to teach us about evolution, which is a complete fraud. Which isn't like, and I was like, when it came to evolution, I was never really convinced by it. I thought it made some sense. I didn't think it made really any sense. It just didn't seem plausible to me, and it still doesn't. Okay, Pasteur disproved evolution. He falsified it when he did his experiments. And Pasteur is, the germ theory guy. And it turns out that's a fraud too. But his experiment on the spontaneous generation, where he basically falsified spontaneous generation. And you can't, just because you push it back hundreds of millions of years doesn't mean that that doesn't do anything. That doesn't mean you don't have to have spontaneous generation in order to have evolution. Okay, at some point you have to have a non-living matter become living matter. And that pretty much makes it evolution impossible. I mean, it doesn't matter if the Earth even was hundreds of millions or millions of years old or whatever they say. I can't even remember what they say anymore. What is it? Supposedly 5.5 million years, and the universe is supposedly 17 million. I mean, it's like they just added 6 zeros to the actual age of the Earth. Right? I mean, because the Earth is 5,783 years old. It's in its 5,783rd year. It's 5,782 years old, actually. Okay, it was probably created around September. I've seen a couple of different dates. I even think some people have suggested possibly September 11th. And October 2nd, I know that one dude, Bishop Usher. So but he said it was 4004 BC. So he was saying it was more like 6,000. It would be 6,000 years today. 6,025 or something. But that's pretty close. But the 5783 is the Hebrew year that we're in. And I'm pretty sure that that's pretty solid. But I could be off a decade or two. It's possible. But I'm sticking with 5783. So now where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so yeah, and we it was 4th or 5th grade that we started to learn about evolution, and like I say, even all the way through high school, I never really bought it. And I remember taking and then I got to the point when I was in my mid-20s, and I took a college class. I was taking a college class. It was historical geology, and it didn't hold water. I mean, The whole 10 million, the like dinosaurs lived 50 million years ago and all that. And Nebraska used to be a sea, and they've changed it back and forth. One day they'll say one thing, and then 10 years later they'll say another. Oh, we know more than we used to. And so, yeah, I mean, the whole timeline is completely, it's just made up. Now, I used to, and after I took this class, basically, I was reading Genesis, and I was trying to figure out when was the last time. Or I was rereading, and I was like trying to understand how stars could be put up on the fourth day if the Big Bang model cosmology was correct. Because, and these people that say that you don't have to be a heliocentrist to be a Big Bang person, that you can reject Big Bang and not reject heliocentrism. It's just like, then what did it like? Then how did it get created? Is it expanding? Is it contracting? This universe, this supposed alleged universe, with billions of stars and planets, and okay, is it static? There was, I think, into maybe the 50s and the 60s, they were saying it was static, but finally they couldn't get I don't know when they switched it to, or maybe it was Einstein that did it. Maybe Einstein was the one that finally got him off the idea that the universe was static, but instead that it was like expanding. Okay, but if you have an expanding universe and you reverse that and you go back in time, if it's getting bigger and bigger as time goes on, then if you go back in time, it gets smaller and smaller, all the way to the point where the universe is about the size of your fist. All the matter is compressed into this cosmic egg. Never mind where that came from, though. So if you think the universe is expanding, there's no other nothing else works. You go all the way back to the universe being like the size of a rock, like the size of your fist, maybe. So, and then if you're like a creationist, like a young Earth creationist, and that was kind of the question that I moved to from, after I had, come to the firm conclusion. I started, I researched evolution again and was coming up with that it was totally bunk. And I actually read some good creationist books, but they were all heliocentrists. And so the problem that they run into is they can't account for all the time and they can't account for the time. Okay, because if the Earth because it's called the distant starlight problem. So the distant starlight problem is when the universe is like distant, or no, when like a distant star. So light supposedly travels at, I don't know, 600 million miles an hour or whatever it travels at. But I mean, they're claiming that some of these stars are light years away, like billions of light years away, or millions for sure. So that means that there would have to be a million years in order for us to be seeing the stars. Okay, and that was one objection that the young Earth people never could quite. The young Earth heliocentrists could never quite do a very good job of answering whether the Earth was a ball or not. Where is all this time? How do you account for all this time? And what they do is something about like God made everything, made it so you could see everything right away. So he so like once he made the stars, he the light was automatically already shining in the earth. There's more light leaving it, but we haven't seen that light yet. But the first light that we saw, Adam and Eve would have seen, would have been light from the stars, but he fast forwarded it to get it to Earth in time. That's the best that they could do. Okay, when you allegedly have these stars that are millions of miles away. So it was, and so I started doing a lot of research on that like in my early 20s, and I'm almost 50 now, so it's been a while. I read a couple of good books. There was one, Case for the Creator by Lee Strobel, and then there's another one that's Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, which that's a good they're both good books. And then but Strobel isn't necessarily a young Earth creationist. But I also read a book, and it was by a young Earth creationist that was it was like a polemic against evolution. So those are the books that are, and then I read a lot of stuff online over the years about, creation versus evolution. And also by young earthers that weren't necessarily flat earthers. And so in 2012, I got really sick. I was really sick. I'm a type 1 diabetic. And I ended up in the hospital a couple times. And so basically what I did, I was and they cut one of my toes off. And so basically I felt like I had to use I should be using my mental energy to not end up dead. So I kind of put those types of questions aside a little bit, and I started doing more research on diet and its relationship to diabetes, and how to to normalize your blood sugars if you were a diabetic, if that could be done, if it could be done safely, what exactly were normal blood sugars. And what I found out there is that the official story is completely wrong. It's the exact opposite of what's true. Okay, saturated fats don't cause heart attacks. Okay, carbohydrate converts to sugar in your blood at a predictable rate. Okay, you don't need any carbohydrates to survive. You can totally you could eat nothing but red meat, and that would probably be that would be just as healthy of a way to eat, about as healthy as you could get. Nothing but red meat. Okay, so they demonize, but they do the opposite. They demonize the red meat. They tell people that it's fine to eat cookies, as long as it's not in excess. But then they don't define what they mean by excess, or they vaguely, they tell people not to eat what they should be telling them to eat. Okay, and then they wonder why people are going blind and losing their limbs. Of course, they make, hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of these companies make, these doctors, these pharmaceutical companies, on insulin, for one thing, because when you reduce carbohydrate, your insulin requirements drop dramatically. When you reduce carbohydrate, you lose weight, which also reduces your insulin, the amount of insulin that you have to use. And you can't these low fat diets that they got people on, these low fat moderate carbohydrate diets that they try to pass off as being low carbohydrate, which aren't, but they're more like moderate. People can't like stick to it. Okay, they end up being hungry all the time. So even if they can stick to it for a while and they do lose some weight, they're eventually going to go back to where they were before because they're going to eventually relapse and go full carb, you know. So so that was like that was my first, you know, in real life. That was my first like clue that, you know, things really aren't what they seem. That nothing is the way they portray that it is. Academia, these academics, these atheists that have like completely taken over the universities, and these politicians who might in certain times pay some lip service to God or to Jesus. But basically all these people that run these institutions have an agenda, and it's not your health. Okay? It's certainly not your eternal salvation. Okay? It's usually it's about money and them making more of it, like they don't already make enough. So yeah, so the whole unraveling of this conspiracy, because that's what it is, of this conspiracy to basically maim and murder diabetics. It was my first like that's when I started not like that's when I started questioning everything. Okay, if anybody like, and I remember, you know, I remember one time somebody asked me, like, somebody was telling me 9/11 inside job, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whatever. I saw it on TV. Okay. So I stopped doing that. In about 2013, 14, I stopped, like, anytime, I stopped, or that's what I've been taught. I stopped giving that as an answer to why for anything, why I believed anything. Okay, I know you all have been taught that the Earth is a ball and it spins. That's what I was taught too, but that doesn't make it true. That does not make it true. So, and incidentally, then like in 2015, somebody was like coming at me again with 9/11 inside job, and I'm like, I did say I saw it on TV, but he, you know, the guy that was like that introduced me to it was persistent about it, and I was like, okay, yeah. So if it's true, it won't. If it's not true, it won't check out. If 9/11 was an inside job, what or was not an inside job, then it won't check out, right? So I ended up watching this video, and I mean, it's and that's like the first time that I'd seen or heard, except for maybe real early, maybe like on the day of, or a couple days. I thought I heard something one time. Maybe I heard something one time about towers, about Building 7, about Tower 7, about Trade Center 7, about the building they collapse into its own footprint at free fall speeds, and 1 and 2 did too. That's already a tell. Regardless, but 7 wasn't struck by a plane, or wasn't even allegedly struck by a plane, because 1 and 2 probably weren't struck by planes either. There's some internecine squabbling over whether um, there were actually planes or not amongst the people who that know that it wasn't 19 Arab terrorists, Muslim terrorists armed with box cutters. That's such an absurd story. I can't believe I ever believed that one. That is just totally ridiculous. That they were like, and they were doing, and they went on this suicide mission because they were promised 72 virgins. I mean, really, that's like, if I were a Muslim or a Muslim or an Arab, I would be really, really very offended by that. I would be offended by people actually fucking believing that. I mean, you guys got to be kidding me. Okay, and we call ourselves a Christian nation. We spent 20 years over there murdering those people. We should have been over there preaching the gospel if this was a Christian nation. Not murdering them and blowing stuff up. So so that's the first thing. That's the first thing about 9/11. I mean, the story itself is stupid. I mean, it's just not plausible or believable. And even if I can't get rid of the plane, even if, and just because I can't answer every question doesn't mean that, like, the whole thing about Tower 7 collapsing into its own footprint at free fall speed, that it had to have been a controlled demolition. And that was the bottom line on that one. But still, there's tons of evidence that they didn't find the black box for years. I don't know if they ever found the black box on one of those planes. They found Muhammad Ali's passport, but they couldn't find the black box. That didn't, like, these planes blew up and collapsed these buildings. But this dude's passport survived. It didn't burn up. Okay. There's no bodies or wreckage at Shanksville, at the Shanksville site. There's no body or wreckage at the Pentagon site either. The damage to the building wasn't consistent, wasn't shaped right. If it had been hit by a plane. The video, the surveillance footage you can't see any plane in the surveillance footage. I mean, that one was like, so now everything is suspect. Every bullshit story that comes out of their holes is, like, completely, like, suspect. So, and I didn't quite get to flat Earth yet, but a couple years later I did. So one day, so Obama was on TV that day. And this was, like, my final approach. Obama was on TV one day. And he was like, oh, 9/11. No, what was he? He was talking about, global warming. He was talking about global warming. And he goes, we don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. And I'm like, right? And I'm like, why? What is Obama talking about? Why is he conflating me with a flat earther? Why is he saying that people that know that the globe isn't warming and that global warming is just a gigantic fraud? Why is he calling us flat earthers? Right? So then a few days later, I talked to this buddy of mine. And okay, he was a big Obama guy, and he used to be, when I used to play Republicans and Democrats, he was, like, always the most fun to play with. He was one of those Democrats that always denied he was a Democrat, but it was like, come get out of here. He was one of those guys that voted for Ron Paul and donated to his campaign. And it was obviously an attempt by those people to, like, fragment the Republican Party. So, and of course, and he votes for him in the primary because he lives in a state with an open primary, and he's registered as an independent. And but of course, at the general election, he probably never voted for a Republican. But anyway, so he was like, so one day he asked me what I thought of flat Earth, or if I've ever heard of it. And I was like, no, not really. And then I'm like, why is Sean asking me about flat Earth? What's up with this flat Earth nonsense? Because I never saw anything in YouTube about flat Earth. Okay, it was never. They were always suppressing flat Earth. Okay, they've gotten more aggressive with it lately since the beginning of the epidemic of sham. But they haven't like but they were never like amplifying it. Okay, you had to look for it to find it. So yeah, I was like, well, since there hasn't been global warming for 17 years, maybe it's time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. Now, so here's the first thing that you have to know about the actual Flat Earth Society. The actual Flat Earth Society is like classic controlled opposition. Okay, they're just these people out there that say they believe the Earth is flat, and then they do a really bad job of making the argument. They make up nonsense like the Earth is always moving up, and that's why gravity. And that's their explanation for when because people assume that there's gravity, even though they can't prove there is. They just assume there is, and so instead of confronting it like that, they make up and they just do a bad job overall of like putting forth the actual theory that the Earth is not a spinning ball. Okay, so this is what the Earth looks like. Okay, this Gleason's azimuthal equidistant map. Azimuthal equidistant. Okay, there's only one pole. It's in the middle. The stars and the sun revolve around us. There's a wall of ice. There's a ring of ice. Okay, this model here holds water. A spinning ball does not hold water. Okay, and you can't just say because gravity. That's not good enough. Okay, and it's not biblical. Now you can go back to Genesis. Now once you get this in your once you see this, then you go back to Genesis. Then all of a sudden the Bible makes a lot more sense, especially the first two chapters. Because you've got all these people that are like, I'm not saying they aren't saved or they aren't genuine believers, but they're holding this competing like these two competing worldviews. They're trying to hold them together inside their head, and they're mutually exclusive. Okay, they have to like rationalize somehow how they believe it was like they have to come up with some nonsense about it wasn't 7 days and God was just told us it was flat because it isn't flat because he didn't think we couldn't understand that it was actually a ball. Like if it was a ball and he made it over millions of years in the universe, he made over millions and millions of years. Like he wouldn't have just told us that. Okay. Okay, so in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Okay, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." It's almost like a diving bell. It seems like to me. Possibly, at least. But apparently there's water above the firmament. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let the waters be under the heaven, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. And so God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth," and it was so. Okay, so this is the verse that debunks evolution. Okay, because he didn't say, and God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass and the herb yielding seed and the fruit." He didn't say that the grass turns into like eventually the grass becomes trees, which is what we're supposed believe that there was a single celled organism that we're lineally descended from. Okay. Right? But that there isn't a single common human ancestor. Which is like I mean it's totally racist. Because that's what white people think. White people think that like white evolutionists think that black people came from monkeys. And that we're more evolved and that white people are more evolved than they are. And they deny it, but that's totally true. That's what they believe. Okay? And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he sea, and God saw that it was good. Okay, verse 12. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself, after his kind. Okay, so this is like they didn't something didn't come out of something. All these plants were reproducing after their own kind. They weren't turning into other. They didn't start out as something and then turn into something else. They didn't start giving birth to other species of animals. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." Okay, so he put the lights in the firmament. Okay, think of it like recessed lighting. It's kind of what I think of when I think of stars in the firmament. Because this dome has probably got like a thickness. It's probably got a certain amount of depth. And the sun probably runs on like something like a track. Same with the moon. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of the heaven." And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let fowl multiply in the earth." I love you, God. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth after his kind," and it was so. Okay, he's not bringing them forth out of a different kind. He isn't bringing out cows aren't turning into whales. Okay, cows give birth to cows, whales give birth to whales. That was another thing in that historical geology. I was like, yeah. I mean, but as you can see, I mean, like the hardest thing to wrap your head around. I mean, if you're a heliocentrist, it's impossible to square the fourth day with the heliocentric model, with the Big Bang or the Big Bang model. Because it would have had to be, even if you look at the days as being not 24-hour days but like ages. There's some of these creationists that are what they call day age creationists, and they think that these days aren't specifically 24-hour days, and obviously they are, because it keeps repeating evening and morning all the way through this first chapter. So when I was a kid, I pretty much, was told that they were still telling the story that everybody thought the Earth was flat in the 15th century, 15th and 16th centuries, in the 14 and 1500s, and that Columbus sailed. That his intent was, everybody thought he was going to fall off the edge, which there is no edge. There, everybody thought he was going to sail over the edge, but he because he knew that the Earth was a ball, he knew there had to be like a way to sail to India from Spain. Okay, and of course the only thing that stopped him was the fact that he ran into this huge continent in between there, right? And that proved that the Earth was a ball. Okay, so now that's a trope. That's another one of their tropes. Nobody thought the Earth was like flat, like a box, like a pizza box. Okay, it's a circle. It's a circle with this high ice and land that surrounds the water and keeps it in. Now, later I read that somebody said Columbus was like, that actually that wasn't true because everybody knew the Earth was a ball already. Okay, but that's just not true. Everybody thought the Earth was flat because it's obviously flat. Okay, water doesn't curve. If the Earth were a ball and everywhere you stood on it, it would have to be sloping away from you at 8 inches per mile squared. And 70% of it is covered in water. So how could it possibly be a ball? Or gravity. Okay, so, and Martin Luther openly mocked ball Earth. Okay, and he was a contemporary of Copernicus. And Galileo didn't come around until the 17th century. And and Galileo said, yeah, the Earth is a ball. And the Pope said, that's an interesting idea. And then he's like, you got to start telling everybody that the Earth is a ball. Then he started like arguing with the Pope because the Pope wasn't enthusiastically endorsing his views strongly enough. And that's how he ended up getting like, the Pope should have just ignored him is what he should have done. But that's how he ended up getting like put on house arrest at the end of his life. Anyway, so this is what Luther said about that. And you can say whatever you want to say about Luther. He was not, but you can accept that he was uneducated. Okay, Luther was probably arguably the most educated man in Europe in his time. Okay, and he was a contemporary of who's that? John Calvin, and a contemporary of I think Erasmus. And those guys were pretty well educated too. But one thing for certain is that Luther was very educated. So not all educated people believed that the Earth was a ball. They all thought it was flat. Roughly. Okay, so celestial bodies do not all revolve around a single point. Okay, no. Okay, Luther stated there is talk of a new astrologer who wants to prove that the earth moves and goes around the sky, goes around instead of the sky, the sun, the moon, just as if somebody were moving in a carriage or a ship might hold, that he was sitting still and at rest while the earth and the trees walked and moved. But that is how things are nowadays. When a man wishes to be clever, he must needs invent something special. And the way he does it, it must needs be the best. The fool wants to turn the whole art of astronomy upside down. However, as Holy Scripture tells us, so did Joshua bid the sun to stand still and not the earth. And there was more. So, yeah, Luther was not a heliocentrist. He rejected it categorically. In the same way with Calvin. Okay, and they were both educated. They were the two of the most educated men in the world at the time. Okay, and Moses was like, if the earth were a ball and it spun, Moses would have said that. Moses would have known. Okay, God would have told him, and he wrote the book of Genesis. Okay, so this is the 7 postulates of the Commentarolius. Celestial bodies do not all revolve around a single point. The center of the earth is the center of the lunar sphere, the orbit of the moon around the earth. All the spheres rotate around the sun, which is near the center of the universe. Okay, so this is like the 7 arguments that I guess are for heliocentrism. And apparently, and these are like, this is like the ones on the left-hand side here that are numbered 1 through 8 are reasons for asserting the earth is motionless. David in Psalm 89, God has founded the earth and it shall not be moved. Joshua bade the sun stand still, which would not be notable if it were not already at rest. Okay. The earth is the heaviest element, therefore it more probably is at rest. Everything loose on the earth seeks its rest on the earth. Why should not the whole earth itself be at rest? We always see half of the heavens and the fixed stars also in a great circle, which we could not see if the earth moved, and especially if it declined to the north and the south. A stone or an arrow shot straight up falls straight down, but if the earth turned under it from west to east, it must fall west of its starting point. See, and this is something that people can, like, this is an argument that still, like, they can't deal with it. The ball earthers, like, when they hear that argument, they it's like their heads explode. And it's probably one of the strongest arguments there is. In such revolutions, houses and towers would fall in heaps. High and low tide would not exist. The flying of birds and the swimming of fish would be hindered, and all would be in a state of dizziness. That's another common argument. I mean, in the counter arguments, I don't know. It's relative to the what the heliocentrists will do to deal with that one is that relative to the Earth, it's not moving like so fast that it would make you dizzy. But if it were an arrow shot straight up would fall straight down. Also in a great half circle, which we could not see if the Earth moved. Okay. If you shot it, if the Earth was spinning, you would shoot it. It would land west always, of where you were standing. If you shot it straight up. So, this is something that I haven't seen for a long time, or that I haven't seen at all until today. But this is a pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good. Those are pretty basic arguments. that we flat earthers use a lot. So Obama and Sean were talking smack, and so I decided to have a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. That's how I became a flat earther. And the funny thing, because because I remember the video that I watched, and it was almost the very first video I watched that got me. I mean, I had to make sure that I was like totally considering everything. And there's some questions that are like harder to answer, like what exactly are stars? And we talked about that a little bit earlier, but some of these things are harder, harder to answer. But once you understand the concept of a firmament, and the whole thing about water being level is another one. The very first video I watched was pictures of ships going out to sea that appeared to be going over the curve, right? I'm sure you've heard that old trope if you're a heliocentrist before. I'm sure you've heard the heliocentrists say that. They don't say it as much as they used to because it got totally destroyed. Because when the guy zooms in and the ship appears to like be coming up from the curve. So it's obviously you've just all it's done is disappear beyond the vanishing point. That your eyes can only have so much, can only angularly resolve stuff up to a certain distance. Okay, you can't see forever. But if you can zoom in on it, that means it's not being hidden by a curve. It's not disappearing over a curve. And that was that one was super rock solid. I'll try to find that and link that. Because it's like 99% already. Right? So then I was like, F me. I can't believe this. I'm actually going to lay. I remember Owen Benjamin, when he first became a flat earther, he was like, I don't want to be a flat earth person. And I went through a moment like that, but it was because people can't accept it. This is so difficult for people to accept this. And if this is true, then if the Earth is flat and not a ball, that means there weren't any moon landings. So germ theory, and then it goes, yeah. There's no need to even like consider that evolution could be possibly true, and that the Earth is any older than the Bible suggests that it is. Okay, there isn't any other literature out there that's really that much old. That's that any other literature, written that comes much earlier. And it's the best, and in the book of Genesis is the best, by far the best and most complete summary of the history of the first 2,500 years of creation. I mean, there isn't anything really out there that's comparable to that. I know sometimes people mention some, like, apparently there was some book that somebody else wrote about a flood. Now all of a sudden that becomes way easier to take literally too. Once you have it through your head that this is what the Earth looks like. Okay, God opened the floodgates. Apparently there's windows up there. And the water that's above the firmament came down and flooded everything, every square inch. So, right? And Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, and Shem was not white. Categorically not white. Shem was black. Shem was black. Ham was Oriental. or what I would call Oriental. And by that, I simply mean like, yeah, Southeast Asian, East Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Koreans. Even the Native Americans are Hamites, are descendants of Ham. Okay? Yafet was white. Yafet was white. He was the white guy. Okay? Jesus was black. You know how I know? Because his mom was black. You know how I know she was black? Because all her, like, everybody like, her mom was black. Going all the way back to David, who was black. Going back all the way to Abraham, who was black, who was like a great-grandson of Shem, who was black. Okay? That's how I know. All right? I love you guys. Don't take the mark, whatever you do. And if you have already, repent. That's all you have to do. You can still go to heaven, but you have to repent. You have to tell Jesus that you're sorry for your many wicked deeds, including ingesting a substance made from murdered baby parts. Okay, it's a sin to ingest orally or by injection a murdered baby part, a substance made from murdered baby parts. The fact that I can't call it what most people call it, the fact that I have to like tiptoe around on this and not call it what it really is, just use the word that everybody else uses when they talk about it. The fact that I can't do that should tell you something. The fact that the controllers of this evil world won't let me say the V word should tell you something. All right, I love you guys. Believe in Jesus. If you believe in him, he who believes and is baptized is saved. He who believeth not is damned. That's the bottom line. So, I'm out. All right, so I'm going to wrap up here. We're at Romans 10, 8 through 12. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we preach. That if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the scripture says, whoever believes on him will not be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek. For the same Lord over all is rich to all who call upon him. For whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Like, share, subscribe. I am out.